Hello everyone and welcome back to Planet Coaster and welcome to Wicker Man. And you might be thinking, hang on, you've already done Wicker Man like over a year ago, so why are we doing it again? Well, it's because I want to redo it. I want to do a new version, a new, more accurate, more detailed version. And you might be thinking, well, surely the last one was detailed enough. Yeah, it wasn't. In this video we're going to be focusing on the track work, and I'm actually going to be pointing out everything wrong with the previous version of Wicker Man and the differences between this version, a new one, and last year's version that I did in May. Or May last year, not May this year, but you get what I mean. And some of you might actually be surprised. I was quite surprised when I looked back at my old version of Wicker Man, to be honest. I was surprised I left a lot of things out. I was surprised that I just completely ruined some bits of the track, to be honest. Especially the first section of track before the lift hill. God, looking back at it, how did I let that pass? I don't know. But yes. This is going to be like a weekly series where each week is going to be focusing on a different parts of the recreation. So this week we are focusing on track work, next week it will probably be the catwalks and the supports, and then the week after maybe big bar, the queue line, station, scenery. Yeah, you get the gist really. So let's just go right into our first bit of track that we're going to look at, and that's actually the whole station area. So let's just transition into that. Right, so this is the station maintenance and pre-show area, and the first thing you probably noticed is the station's in the wrong place. Yes, I know it is, you don't need to point out in the comments, and there is very good reason for that. So, well, the only reason being is the station in Planet Coaster is just way too big to fit in the Wicker Man station. Yes, it's annoying. I've always said stuff like this in my recreations. Planet Coaster does need to sort out the size of the station because it's so big. It's just, I don't understand why it's so big. But yeah, to combat it, I put the station in the maintenance garage, and instead it's just going to go through the actual station on the block section. So it will simulate that it's a station, but it means that it's not really going to be rideable. The queue line isn't really going to be there. Of course, I'm going to try and have animated air gates. I'll do those in Blender. And it might look better, but it does mean that guests won't be able to ride this recreation, unfortunately. But this is the things we've got to deal with in Planet Coaster, and hopefully it does get fixed for Planet Coaster 2. Now, the second thing I want to talk about in this section is the profiling and the whole shape of the little sort of S-bend section just before the lift hill. It is looking a lot better this time around than it was last time. And so, of course, you can see a clear S there. Let's just go to the previous version of Wicker Man and let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks horrible. I don't know how I managed to do it like that. I even had the floor plan doing it and I still managed to screw it up that much. I really don't understand. But yeah, it's looking a lot better now, and this time it is of course banked. On the previous version I didn't bank it at all because I didn't know it was banked actually, because I just didn't really notice it. But of course, since doing that recreation last year, I have noticed it and it is now banked and it's looking much better. So the next bit of track we're looking at is the first drop just after the train has detached from the lift hill. Now there's quite a well, not a big difference, but it's a slight difference from the previous version to this version in terms of the heights and the whole shaping of the drop. It is basically the same as the previous version, but what has really changed is the banking. Now on the previous version I had the banking go back to 0 degrees before the train goes into the main drop, whereas in real life the banking goes to 0 degrees midway through the main drop. So that's what I've done on this new version. The banking now stops midway through the main drop instead of at the top like it was on the previous version, and of course it's looking much better and a lot more realistic than the previous version. So then we move a bit more down the Wicker Man hill and we come out to the S-bend just after the first airtime hill. Now here is quite a big difference in terms of height. In the previous version I put this S-bend on quite a steep decline coming out of the airtime hill, when in real life it's very shallow. It does level out quite a bit when it exits that airtime hill and it goes into that right hand turn. So it's kind of a bit odd. It goes into the right hand turn, leveled out, and then it starts going a bit more down as it banks into the left hand turn. So it's a bit odd. It was a bit fiddly to do this, but I think in the end, in this new version, it does look a lot more realistic, and it looks a lot more like the real life version than the previous version. I think it looks quite good, and it's very smooth because I did the autocomplete method, which is quite a good method to do if you don't already do it. Do 4 meter track pieces and then just like smooth it once and then autocomplete it. I might do a tutorial video on it because it actually can be quite handy sometimes, instead of completely smoothing it like 4-8 times with the 4 meter method. So yeah, I definitely will do a video tutorial on that sometime. Anyway, let's move on to the next bit of track. So then we go a tiny bit west of the S-bend to the first twisted airtime hill of what Taylor Bumblebee calls the Beehive for some reason. And yeah, we're not just focusing on that airtime hill, but also this entire section of track leading through to the flat turnaround at the top of the hill. I mean, it's not a flat turnaround, it is banked, and I'll be talking a bit more about that in a second. But to talk about the airtime hill, it's a lot better shaped than it was before, and it is in the right position now, in line with the floor plan. The previous one wasn't at all, and it's a lot more shallow than the previous version, I think, which is what it is in real life. And then coming out of it into that little tiny hill, you don't really get airtime on that hill, but it's there. That wasn't there at all in the previous version. I don't know how I missed that. I really don't know, because it's there, but I just left the track flat in the previous version. But it is there now, and then it goes into that turnaround at the top of the lift hill, and that turnaround isn't flat, it is banked. It's banked a very tiny bit. In the previous version it was completely flat because I didn't know it was banked back then until I saw the Wicker Man POV on Virtual Towers Online, and I was like, wait, is it banked? And then I looked a bit more about the real life POV, and yeah, it is definitely banked. I didn't know it was banked, so in this version it is of course banked. I think I did it about 5 or 6 degrees. It might be more than that. If it is more than that, then put it down in the comments and I will fix it for next week's episode. And yeah, apart from that, that's all to do with this section of track. So let's move on to the next and final section of track, which is the second twisted airtime hill going into the brake run. So then for the final section of track going into the brake run, the main difference is the lack of banking coming out of that airtime hill and into the final turnaround. Now that's what it is in real life. When you go down that little dip there's not really that much banking. There is banking, there's a little bit, but not that much. The banking starts around midway through the turn, that's where the banking starts, and in the old version I had the banking starting right after the airtime hill, which was completely wrong, and yeah, it does look a lot better now. So it's correct, it's much more accurate now with the lack of banking there, and it does look a bit odd. I feel like the old version looks better, but of course the new version is just realistic. That's just how it is in real life. I don't know why it's like that, why there's no banking coming out of that hill, but it's like that. I really don't know. And to comment a bit on that final little, just a bit of a twist into the brake run, of course the previous version it was banked a little because the track it was auto completed and it just looked a bit skew-if, whereas this version it's completely flat now, which is what it's like in real life. Unfortunately in real life the brake run is a bit banked, so the fins actually do make contact with the brake fins, but unfortunately you can't do that in Planet Coaster. You can't bank the brake run in Planet Coaster, so it has to be flat, even though in real life it is banked. I think on every single GCI it's banked, and yeah, I do believe they do it just to make sure that the fins on the train do go into contact with the friction brakes on the track. It's quite interesting that they have to do that. I'm not sure if they do that on steel coasters. I think on steel coasters they are aligned a lot better. But yeah, that's it for this episode. I'm just going to do a bit of an outro now, and just to give you a bit of information and what's been happening over the past few weeks. So I haven't had much time to do Planet Coaster stuff. I don't have much time anymore because I've started university. I've also moved from Northamptonshire up here to Staffordshire. I'm now in Stoke-on-Trent, so I'm only about 15 miles away from Alton Towers, which is very convenient for just going there for a few hours, maybe get some reference pictures for this new Wicker Man recreation, of course. And yeah, so that's what I've been doing over the past 2 weeks. I do have a lot of work to do now with my course, and you know, before it was just lockdown. I literally had nothing to do than play Planet Coaster and other games, so I could have done it all day, but now can't do that anymore. And yeah, I don't know if I will be able to do this series quite frequently, but it is a series I really want to do. This is the first time in a long time that I felt really motivated with Planet Coaster. I don't know why, but just doing this entire bit of track work, this took about 4 to 5 hours, and by the end of it I wasn't really tired or bored of it. I wanted to do more. I wanted to go straight onto the supports and the catwalk, but I restrained myself, said no, gotta leave it for the next video next week. So yeah, so far I am really enjoying this recreation, and well, that's it for this video. So I guess I will see you in the next video next week, where we are going to be doing these supports and a catwalk, and I hope you will tune in next week for the next episode. With that being said, thank you very much for watching today's video, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.